like a dreamer. Fly all over the world. Open your shut so the world can see. You're a beautiful pearl. Live your day like you mean it. And don't forget who you are. You're free to go anywhere. There's no distance too far. And I just can't get enough of your energy. I just can't get enough. You're the spark shining in the dark. Oh, 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 love.
Welcome to It Is What It Is with Cindy Seville. We have another exciting show for you in store today. I want to welcome you. It Is What It Is a show all about real people telling real life stories, stories of adversity and how people overcame them, and then they inspire others in sharing their story. Now, we all have a story, and everybody has a story, and everybody is fascinating if you just care to listen. So wait till you hear about our guests. But first, I want to talk about mitzvah time. Now, what's a mitzvah? I'm not even going to give you an example of a mitzvah today, but I'm going to encourage you to do your own mitzvahs and to share them with me, share them with others. A mitzvah is a good deed. And that's all it is. It's a good deed. And we should do lots of mitzvahs. Mitzvot is plural for many mitzvahs. But do something nice. Try to do something nice every single day. You know, I live my life by that. You know, I always try to go out of my way to do something, whether it's holding the door for somebody, whether it's paying for their cup of coffee, you know, whatever it is. Just do a mitzvah. Do a mitzvah every day. It'll make this world a much better place to live in. Now, the giveaway, it is October, and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so this book is perfect for the giveaway. Comment, like, and share. That's your way to win. And it is called, I'm going to swear, It Is What It Is, by me. And it is a book full of and there's a warning label on the back. Don't pick up this book if you're not able to handle the vocabulary, the twisted sense of humor, because those of you who know me and those of you who are getting to know me, you know I have a twisted sense of humor. So it's all in here. I tell my life journey, and it's a book that everybody can relate to in some way. Just like anybody talking about their life adversity, this is my life adversity, and I hope it's my last. I pray I never, ever have to deal with anything like this again, and I hope you never do too. But we all have something, and that's what this show is all about, is sharing and inspiring. So when we come back from this commercial break, you're going to meet this fabulous man. His name is Michael Emmett. He is a ex-drug trafficker. He is a he recovered. He was a drug addict as well. He went to prison, and he lived a life of crime, and he is now completely reformed and doing fabulous things. So when we come back, you're going to meet this beautifully well-spoken, eloquently spoken, actually, incredibly fascinating and interesting man, Michael Emmett. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Silvermine at Home, a Connecticut-based non-medical home care agency servicing Connecticut and parts of New York. Silvermine caters to their clients' needs while offering peace of mind to their families so their loved one can age in place and live their best life possible. Call today to see how they can make a difference in you or your loved one's life. Our family caring for yours. Visit silvermineathome.com or call 203-228-5007.
Welcome back to It Is What It Is with Cindy Seville. We have Michael Emmett here. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, nice to meet you, Cindy. It's my pleasure.
Nice to meet you as well. And you are where? Where are you located?
I'm in London, in West London, near the West End of London.
How wonderful that you joined us. And there's quite a time difference. We almost got it confused.
Absolutely. It's 10 past 5 here in the late afternoon, early evening.
And here you're about 5 hours ahead of us.
Okay.
Yes. So
you're Saturday lunchtime, are you?
You know what? I didn't even eat yet. So if you hear my stomach growling,
I've just had lunch.
I usually don't eat before I record, and I hear my stomach growling. Thank God the camera does, or the microphone doesn't pick it up.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
If anybody ever hears it. So you have quite an interesting life, Michael.
So they say.
I was fascinated when we connected on Facebook, and when I learned a little bit about your story, I said, I have to have him on my show. So you are an ex-drug trafficker.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm an ex-drug trafficker. Yeah, back in the day. Quite a big one too.
And I mean, and you also, you went to prison.
Yeah.
You were raised in this pretty much, because what I learned was your father also, was a pretty notorious criminal.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. So where did you grow up? Did you grow up where you're currently living, in that same area?
No, my father was my parents were obviously sort of war children, the Second World War, that sort of, and in London there was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of, families were tight, and after the war, and I was sort of born a few years after that, well, a number of years after that, but we were from South London, and, we lived in the council flats at a very early age. My dad was a bit of a serial, he'd been married 4 times. I was his second family.
Okay.
He was a notorious character. He was out of Battersea in South London, and my mother was out of Southeast London, and we sort of lived over that way as children. And then at a very early age, my dad took us out of London to try to better our lives, and he took us to quite a posh place in Surrey when I was about 6.
Wow. Now, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, there were 7 of us all together. He had 4 marriages, my dad. His first 2 marriages, there was 6 of us, and then he had a child very late on in life, so there was 7 siblings.
Wow. Let me ask you, out of all 7 siblings, are you the only one that chose that alternate path in life? So there were others?
Out of all of us, I mean, sadly, 2 have passed away. So there was 4 boys and there was 3 girls. And my eldest brother from my dad's first marriage, who had the same name as my father, and it sounds like I'm glorifying crime, but I'm not. But he was an armed robber, an armed bank robber.
Okay.
I know, bless his heart.
Wow. Now, I have so many questions. How did you get involved in a life of crime? I mean, I know that, listen, usually we mimic things our parents do. They always say, oh, you become your mother. Oh, you become your father. Oh, you marry your mother. You marry your father, somebody like them. How did you get involved in the life of crime? What enticed you?
From a very early age, my father took me out of sort of the rough area of London and took me down to Surrey, where it was a completely different lifestyle. Yeah. So my dad was very protective of this part of his family, my sister, myself, and my younger brother. And he tried to better our lives. So he took us away from all of this. Now, I did see things at a very young age that I shouldn't have seen. Yeah. But whether that influenced me, I'm not sure. But I have a faith in God, yeah, over all of this, yeah. And one of the things that I sort of read about was the sins of the forefathers. So my grandfather, who sadly committed suicide, and my dad were very similar characters. And it wasn't because my grandfather taught my dad to be it, to be honest with you. And I had them traits. So as much as they was lying in me, that dishonesty, at a very young age, not what my dad wanted, I started stealing when I was about 11. Yeah, to his shock and dismay. And I started breaking into sort of grocery stores at a very young age. And I first got arrested when I was 13, and he was absolutely so annoyed and angry with me. So it was part of my makeup, and that's the truth. He didn't teach me how to do criminal activities, and before I knew it, I was off. And I suppose the excitement in it, you know, I'm a recovering alcoholic, 22 years sober.
Congratulations.
And I think the addict, the compulsion, the obsession to be driven into something is not about drink and drugs. The addict, I think, I've done a lot of work on it, is driven by something inside of him that can be very dysfunctional. And that's what sort of started me off. I wasn't very good at school. I couldn't concentrate. And I had this thing going on, and I didn't know what it was. I was sort of ignorant to it. I just thought it was how you lived your life. And I started thieving. I started, stealing. And to be honest with you, I started enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I would think the adrenaline is addictive.
Very much so.
Yeah, and the money, I mean, there was a lot of money involved, right?
Eventually there was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But when you were young, stealing, I mean, 11 years old, if you're stealing something, it's, it's money, it's whatever, it's something worth something, it's value. And I can see how that could be addictive. And you.
Well, it was very addictive. I think what it was, it's that thing about living on the edge. Yeah. It's not being satisfied in one's spirit. We always feel as addicts. I'm only speaking about an addiction, and I think it's hereditary as well, because of I'd done things that my dad done, and he certainly didn't show me. So I look at the evidence of me growing up, and I see that I had a wonderful mother who was full of love. I had a very special mother, actually, and she was the opposite of my father. She was very peaceful, very kind. She adored my daddy. She adored him. And so I had these two sort of makeups going on in my life. And before I knew it, I was just drawn to, I never felt satisfied. I always felt at dis-ease with myself, even at school. I was always looking for a fix. Sadly, at a very young age, I was sexually abused at a very young age by the babysitter. And I think that had an influence. Obviously, it affected my relationship with women. My mother was this beautiful soul who just gave love away constantly. But I had this damage going on from the abuse, having a criminal father, picking up the same traits that he had, the way as I got older, I thought, God, my dad does that. So, and he didn't teach me it. So it became a nature that I had, driven by low self-worth and wanting to feel better about myself. But I didn't understand that at that particular time.
That's pretty powerful. I mean, that you've come to all of those conclusions. I mean, that you understand, why you were who you were.
Yeah. It took a long time for me to understand that.
Yeah.
Because I used to live in my head and fix myself with drink, drugs, and money and crime. And that's what I done in a very dishonest way, to be quite honest with you.
Right, right. Now, how did your mother deal with all of this? I mean, being the kind, loving, because I was going to ask you about her, the kind, loving soul that she is she gone? Past?
Yeah, she died sadly 5 years ago. So did my father. They died within 6 months of each other.
Oh, wow.
They weren't young. They had a good full life.
Yeah.
But I think what my mother used to take on board, my mother used to say to me, she was always about love. And in her opinion, love had no boundaries to her own. And she used to say to me, son, love is an action. It's not a feeling. It's a verb. It's a doing word. And all I do is love all of you. And albeit she didn't like some of the stuff that went on, but she knew what my dad was. She chose to marry him. Yeah. And she stood by him. Yeah. And I was blessed. Thank God she was there, to be honest with you, Cindy, because she was the antidote. She was the She was the kindness and the peace in the house. And she just loved my dad unconditionally. That was her journey.
She grounded all of you.
Very much so. I mean, when my father was with my mother, he pretended he was a straight person, you know, an honest person. So we lived in this lovely house down in Surrey, and he used to get up every day and go to work as an antique dealer. But behind the facade was a very dangerous man. And I'm not giving that credit. I'm just saying who he was. Sure. He was a great boxer. He was involved with all sorts of criminal activities. You know, his friends. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Great Train Robbery in the UK. That was massive.
I read about it. I didn't hear about it, but I did read about it when I was researching you.
Okay, so my dad was associated to them sort of people. And we had a notorious gangster family in London called the Cray Twins. There was the Richardsons. That was in the 60s. That was turf war. And my dad was involved with all them sort of people. But my dad took his criminal life very seriously. So security was the utmost for my father. But growing up, I didn't used to see all that. I see a dad who loved his children. He put me through a great school. I played rugby. At my school, they used to do fencing, rowing. Good schools used to do things like that. The educational level in my school was good. I just couldn't adapt to it. I was good at sport. So he tried his hardest to keep me away from that. And he lived a life, I suppose, which was a lie, really, to be quite honest with you. And that permeated the house. For some unknown reason, we always knew that to keep our mouths shut. Our home got raided by the police on a number of occasions, armed police. And I don't know, children, they seem to sort of push it to one side. And he tried to navigate it well. But eventually, you know, it just was apparent that we was a criminal family. And my dad was one of the biggest cannabis smugglers into the UK, into the 80s. Late 70s, all of the 80s and early 90s.
You say cannabis?
Yeah, cannabis, all sorts of crimes, but that was what we became. We were cannabis in, you know, it's legal today. Yeah. But we was, it was lots of it. It was tons of it.
Yeah. Wow.
Organized crime.
Yeah. Now, did he start at a very young age also, like you?
Well, my dad told me that his father, my grandfather got shot in the Second World War, and he was a cripple, yeah? And he used to walk about on 2 sticks. Very, very, very intelligent man, my grandfather. But his disability made him quite an aggressive man, angry man. And his father wanted him to go to school. He was going to be a technical drawer, like a surveyor. He was a good athlete. He run in the junior all Olympic sports at White City, 400. Well, it's called the 440 then, 400 meters. He boxed at a good amateur level, my father, and my grandfather had good hopes for him. But he gravitated to the boxing fraternity in the UK, sort of in the, you know, the late 50s, early 60s, and it was a criminal element. And his fraternity of friends as young kids, they were criminals, and he gravitated to that. But massively, his dad was so angry with him. But that's what he done, and he took a life on as a criminal at a very young age, my father. Wow. And he was very well known on the sort of the underworld and the streets of London.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, with that, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick little break for a commercial. But when we come back, more from Michael Emmett. You are going to love what you hear. It is fascinating. We'll be right back.
Do you or a loved one need the care of a nursing home? A vibrant community to call home where there are healthcare professionals available 24/7? Candlewood Valley Health and Rehabilitation, located in New Milford, Connecticut, has been offering award-winning care for over 40 years. Whether you are rehabilitating from a cardiac procedure or hip replacement, or seeking a place for your loved one to live where he or she can receive top-notch health care, our team is at the ready. We also accept veteran benefits and offer a special secure memory care unit for residents with Alzheimer's or cognitive related conditions. Call us at 860-355-0971. Candlewood Valley Health and Rehabilitation, a place to heal and thrive. Ballas Associates, sales, service, and support for all your computer and PC networking needs. Whether it's wired or wireless, upgrades or repairs, backup or disaster recovery, we can provide the solutions to all your PC needs. No need to get frustrated. You know a guy. Just call Ballas Associates at 203-792-2300. That's 203-792-2300. Or visit them online at ballasassociates.com.
Welcome back to It Is What It Is with Cindy Seville and Michael Emmett. All right, Michael, I have some more questions for you.
Fire away.
So what other kind of drugs? Now, you trafficked cannabis. Did you traffic any other kinds of drugs?
I don't really want to answer that question if you don't mind.
Nope.
I only want to speak about the stuff I got arrested for. But
Okay.
cannabis was one of the major things that we used to smuggle.
Okay, that's fair. Listen, any question I ask you don't want to answer, you just tell me.
That's cool.
Like you did.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Use your imagination.
Right. I appreciate you sharing what you are sharing.
Bless you.
So you mentioned something that your career in crime was all about. What was it all about to you?
Well, I suppose the reality, it's funny, as we get older, and I suppose, I don't know, wisdom comes or peace comes or I'm a grandfather today. But when I look back, and sometimes I have to think, wow, was that me? I immersed into life. So my father kept me out of the way in Surrey. Yeah. So although I was still being a little bit of a naughty boy, getting arrested and getting in trouble, when I got to the sort of tender age of about 18, I came to live back in London, and I don't know, criminal activities, I just gravitated to it. I mean, sadly, I never got a job. I did work for my father. He used to sell commercial lorries, which are big vehicles. Okay. And I worked in there when I left school for about a year. But there was something there was a burning desire for me to earn money. And I went my own way, and I started doing crime at when I was about 18, 19, I started being involved with stolen antiques in London. I got arrested for that. For handling stolen goods. Wow. And then I sort of lent myself to, I suppose, my addiction. I started using cocaine and smoking cannabis, knowing full well that my dad was at that sort of, that was the sort of behind the scenes work. And I gravitated to what he was doing. And because I had the connection there with my father, I had access to anything that I wanted. So I started to get involved with the sort of selling it at street level. Yeah. Right. And then I worked my way up into an apprenticeship, let's call it. Let's just say that. I was involved with a horrendous car chase with a wanted criminal who was wanted for a gun and all sort of, sadly he died. And I was in a car chase with him, being chased by the police. We had a terrible car accident. They couldn't find the drugs straight away because of the condition of the car. We got arrested. They give me bail because they couldn't find anything at that particular time. Yeah. And they arrested him. They let me go. I was in a wheelchair, badly hurt, but I absconded and I jumped bail, and I went to live out in a place called Marbella, which is in southern Spain. That was in the early 80s. And I started to mess about down there, selling a bit of cannabis. That was in the early 80s. And then tragic here, I was down there wanted by the police. My younger brother came down, who was a complete angel. He was a really beautiful boy. He came down to support me while my grandfather was dying, my mother's father. We used drugs one night, cocaine. He wasn't really a drug user. There was a lot of criminals wanted by the police living in Spain. It's all documented. You can read that. It was called Costa del Crime. There was an extradition there with England couldn't get you back to England at that particular time. So I went, a lot of my dad's friends down there, the notorious Freddie Foreman, who was a henchman for the Cray twins. The Great Train, was a few of them down there, and they just helped me, supported me. So I started to mess about down there. But very sadly, when me and my brother went out and we was taking cocaine, we had a bit of an argument. And he got in the car and he drove off, and sadly he went underneath a lorry and it killed him stone dead. He was only 21 years of age. So that contributed to the damage and the madness of Michael. I couldn't believe he died. His girlfriend was 3 months pregnant with his son, who was born, is alive today. And he wasn't the one. He was the angel of the family. He didn't have what my dad had. I had it. Right. So when he died, it was it changed everyone's life. It was so tragic what happened to him. It was a very bad car crash. And it didn't stimulate peace. It just created more madness and carnage in the family. And it was something that it took a long time for us to get over, to be quite honest with you.
Right. I'm sorry for the loss. That's awful.
Yeah.
How many times did you get arrested or go to prison?
I went to prison 3 times. Once on remand, which is you're on remand waiting for trial, and I got out of that. And then the second time, when I was in that car chase, when I came back after my brother died, I got rearrested by the police, and I was looking at quite a long time. But fortunate for me, I got 4 not guilties, and I spent about a year or 2 in prison that time. And then the third time was when I got arrested for the big importation with my father.
Yeah. Now, I read something that your father tried to dissuade you from a life of crime, but when he realized that it was just in you, it's just who you were, that he kind of guided you, right?
Well, I think what he'd done, when he knew that I was sort of actively involved, sort of at street level, he was okay with it. And then I moved up. It's like an apprenticeship, I mentioned it earlier. So I moved up into a situation where he could see that I was a big lad. I was 6'2". I knew everyone you needed to know on the streets of London from my own inquiries and what I used to get up to. That eventually he got arrested with a friend of his for a large amount of cannabis. And fortunate for them, there wasn't enough evidence because then it was on a boat or whatever happened. I don't know the ins and outs of it. And he got released from that trial with a very famous gangster in London. His name was Joe Pyle. They had connections out in America with the 5 families in New York. So it was sort of documented to sort of, international sort of criminal activities. And then that's when my dad came out of that prison time, and he said to me, would you like to work with me? And he gave me all his contacts, and off I went. And that I was about, how old was I when that happened? I was about 30 when that happened. I'd messed about with him previously, but when we got serious, I was about 29, 30.
And then, wow. And then when was, I guess, the last time you committed your last crime? How old were you? I mean, your life of crime went from, you said 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, until when? I mean, when you went to prison the last time?
Yeah, that was the last time my criminal, I think so, but roughly about that sort of time. The last time I was arrested, which is in 1993.
Okay.
So my career as a criminal, I got up to where I suppose, for me, it was money. Yeah. For me, it was, I wasn't doing it for any other reason because of the money. And, I got arrested for, they say, 13 million pounds worth of cannabis. So it was high-end activities, organised crime at the highest level. And my father, with his connections, which sort of spread around Europe, out to the States, he started to introduce me to people down in Morocco. And I opened up this sort of new enterprise. It was a family business. And because they was his contacts, I went along with a good CV. They respected my father and trusted my father, and doors began to open for me. But I was still a crazy little kid who thought he knew everything. But I had the tenacity, I had the energy to achieve what my dad wanted me to do.
Right, right. Now, ironically, the two of you ended up in prison together.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you're going to be somewhere, at least you have your dad with you, right?
So, look, God, it had its plus and minuses. Trust me.
I,
God, yeah, I was in a cell with him for 2 years. He drove me mad.
12. Did you both get sentenced to the same amount of time?
Yeah, we was arrested at gunpoint. It was organised crime. They say it was around the world. There was a cocaine cartel involved with the transportation, nothing to do with us.
Okay.
But it was a very, very large importation, a lot bigger than what I got arrested for. So it went round the world, it was massive. So there was a number of syndicates sort of involved, and we was the entry into the UK. So when we got arrested, we'd organised a boat to go out down in a place called Devon it's in the southwest of the UK, that bit at the bottom where the boot is, Cornwall and Devon. And we brought it in on the ocean in a place called Bideford, which is a fishing village in North Devon. There was, because there was 17 of us, I think there was 60 officers there. I think 12 were armed with night sights. It was organised crime. We got caught. My dad weren't there. He got caught later. So when we went to prison, yeah, we were together for 2 years in the cell. We both got the same sentence.
Wow.
We were sentenced to 12.5 years. And at one stage, we got a £3 million fine or do another 6 years. But that got sorted out. And we was doing 12.5 years together, yeah.
Wow, wow. Did anybody ever mess with your father or no, in jail, in prison?
No, although he was an older man then. When he got arrested, he was in his 60s, my father. But there was respect on the streets for my dad. He was what they called old school. Yeah. So, and plus he had me with him, and we knew everyone in the criminal fraternity. So most of the prisons, we knew people.
Right, right. Wow. Now, I did read something or I heard something that your father arranged for a marriage while he was in prison. Is that true?
Yeah, that was right. That was right.
Tell
That
us
was a bit
about
crazy, that.
Tell us about that. Who was he going to marry? Was that the fourth wife?
Yeah, it was his fourth wife. She was a psychiatric nurse. I said, I think how they met each other. He was as mad as a March hare, but a lovely, lovely old boy. He was only a short man. I'm 6'1". He was about 5'8", 5'9", 10. My dad was quite short, but he was Irish descent. And so, yeah, he marries. I mean, it's not something that I'm proud of today, but I will share it. You've obviously done a bit of research.
Yeah.
So my dad, being a cannabis smuggler, had never used drugs before in his life. Never. To him, it was a commodity. Yeah. Right. And he wasn't really into this sort of class A smuggling, my father. And I'm not trying to justify cannabis, but it was organised crime at a high level. Financially, it was lucrative. There were very dangerous criminals involved, and so it had whatever it had to be. It said it on the tin. It was organised crime, and we was involved. Yeah. Right. So I suppose for my father, he sort of went into retirement a little bit, and he pushed me up the front. So when we was in prison together, as he started to get a bit older, I protected him. A lot of people protected him. And so we done our prison sentence quite easily, to be quite honest with you. But do you know what? I forgot your question.
About the marriage.
About the marriage. I am so sorry. Because obviously didn't want to share that. So he never used drugs.
To you all day.
It's cool. He never used drugs. So one day he started to smoke some cannabis. So I was a bit upset about it because I was nervous about him smoking cannabis. Right. But it relaxed him, and he was doing his art. He used to sing in the cell and all the Irish rebel songs. But that was him. So, and then one day he said to me he was getting married to Roisin, the psychiatric nurse, and would I be a witness? I said, yeah, of course. Anyway, I forgot about it a little bit. Anyway, in the morning, he's got out of bed, got himself dressed. He's got this sort of linen shirt on, linen trousers. He looked like he was going out for the day. And he said, I said, oh, Dad, or whatever. I can't remember exactly. But he said, I'm getting married this morning. So we're all sitting there. And then in the set, I mean, this is embarrassing, but I'll tell it. He asked me, would I roll him a joint? Which I said, yeah, I will do. So the guy next door, they were two armed robbers. And they were smoking what we call crack cocaine. That's what they done.
Right.
And I went into their cell to roll this thing for my dad. And on the side was a very, very small bit of cocaine. And foolishly, I put it in his little reefer joint and he smoked it.
Oh, geez.
And my mate went, oh, my God, what have you done?
Oh, no.
And where he'd never used it before, his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth.
Oh, no.
And he couldn't speak. And they called him out from the chapel about 5 minutes after he'd spoken this thing. So I walked him down to the governor's office and he was not in a great space.
Right.
You can imagine.
I can imagine.
It was crazy. Anyway, eventually we fixed the situation. He walked into the governor's office with the vicar and his fourth wife. And they all looked at him. You could see he was sweating. I thought, what have I done? And his wife said, what's the matter with you? And I jumped forward and said, oh, he's nervous about getting married. She said, nervous about getting married? This is his fourth wedding in the prison, right? Anyway, Eventually we calmed him down. We give him some food, gave him some drink. But he was livid. It lasted for about it wasn't loads of it, but it lasted for about 15 minutes. And to my shame, although it's a funny story, it's not the thing I should have been doing, really. So, Dad, I'm sorry.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to end this one segment, the second segment, on that note. It's hysterical. I have a question about that when we come back after this commercial break, though, okay? So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Silvermine at Home, a Connecticut-based non-medical home care agency servicing Connecticut and parts of New York. Silvermine caters to their clients' needs while offering peace of mind to their families so their loved one can age in place and live their best life possible. Call today to see how they can make a difference in you or your loved one's life. Our family caring for yours. Visit silvermineathome.com or call 203-228-5007. Do you or a loved one need the care of a nursing home? A vibrant community to call home where there are healthcare professionals available 24/7? Candlewood Valley Health and Rehabilitation, located in New Milford, Connecticut, has been offering award-winning care for over 40 years. Whether you are rehabilitating from a cardiac procedure or hip replacement, or seeking a place for your loved one to live where he or she can receive top-notch health care, our team is at the ready. We also accept veteran benefits and offer a special secure memory care unit for residents with Alzheimer's or cognitive-related conditions. Call us at 860-355-0971. Candlewood Valley Health and Rehabilitation, a place to heal and thrive.
There, I'm Captain Splish. I'm the superhero swimming. I'll teach you to be water safe with all my swimming skills, along with all my sing-along friends here in Splish Splashville. Myrtle the turtle, Octi the octopus, Starry the starfish, and that's just a few. You'll learn all about what your body can do. My superpower is to teach with song and rhyme, and that helps you remember what you learn every time. You'll learn to float and you'll learn to swim, from blowing bubbles to jumping in. Each week, you'll learn something new. You'll be amazed at what your body can do. I'm so excited for you to see the show, but now Captain Splash has to go. See you soon. Bye.
Welcome back to It Is What It Is with Cindy Seville and Michael Emmett. So, Michael, I have a question based on what you had just shared with us, that you rolled your dad a joint and a little bit of cocaine got in there, right? It was supposed to be cannabis, and just before his wedding to the psychiatric nurse. It's just great, a story right there. What a great story. How did the drugs get in the jail in the first place, in the prison?
Well, I mean, I don't want to tell tales and get anyone into trouble, but there's sort of a number of ways that it gets in. You know, people take it on visits, people swallow it.
Right.
You know, people do all sorts of things to get drugs into prison. There's corruption nowadays, where I've noticed a number of prison officers being arrested for it.
Right.
And I think with us guys, there's a will. Where there's a will, there's a way. But what I do believe, right, and I'm not saying this is official, but unofficially, I think things like cannabis are sort of were allowed, was not allowed, but I think they like the aftermath of people smoking cannabis because it used to chill people out.
Yeah.
The Class A drugs that I was never really involved with in prisons, I never get. I mean, that was just a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
But the Class A drugs, it brought. It was very dark. There was a lot of heroin being used. There was a lot of drugs being used, and however they used to get that into the prisons, I don't know. Right, but what we used to do, swallow it, or there were certain people. There were, there were certain ways you could do it, and like I say, I read a lot now that there's been a lot of corruption in prisons where prison officers sort of take advantage, and that's how it works out. But you can get it; you'll be surprised.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it was kind of ironic saying, "Oh yeah, I'm in prison, but I'm rolling a joint," right? I went to jail for drugs, but I'm doing drugs.
I know.
It's funny.
It's crazy. You'd be surprised what goes on in prisons.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. I mean,
we're not a bad bunch of guys. We're not bad. I mean, you do get a lot of horrendous crimes. But you know what I've noticed over the years, especially of late? I think the whole world's corrupt. You know, when I look at what's been going on over the last number of years with this COVID and wars around the world and people getting killed and all things that go on in Syria, even now with what's going on with Russia, I think life's cheap. And I think we're governed by power, money, deceit. And yet us criminals, we have to go to prison. But a lot of crime goes on, I think, at a higher level. They just get away with it.
They do get away with it. I totally agree with you.
There's a lot goes on. And we don't do a lot. There's more corruption in governments than there certainly is in us criminals. And I'm not condoning crime.
I know. Yeah, no, I know. And I have to agree with you, and I agree with the whole COVID and there was a purpose. There was
monetary power.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, I agree with you.
Look at Ukraine at the moment. Why are innocent people getting killed? Why? What, for gas, oil? It all goes on. And it makes me concerned about the future for my grandchildren, to be quite honest with you.
How many grandchildren do you have?
I got 8.
8 grandchildren?
I'm a proud grandfather.
Wow. First of all, I love your accent. 8.
Cockney.
8 grandchildren. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now that you're a free man, you've been a free man for quite a while.
A long time.
Okay. So ever have any temptation to go back to that lifestyle?
Well, I think it's a culture that it's hard to get rid of. It's a mindset, you see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you venture into that life, the hardest thing to do is get out of it. It's really hard to get out of it. Right. But what happened to me, and I will answer your question, what happened to me, where I feel the abuse as a child, the criminal father, mm-hmm. My brother dying, yeah. I think that the soul in me was burnt. And I think it was very dirty, my soul, from what I used to do in life. Yeah. And I wasn't very honest in my relationships. I sort of, I was very dishonest to my wife. Yeah. And it was all about, and I had a soul, I had a conscience,
Mhm.
but I really got carried away in all of it. And I think the addiction, yeah, which caused me nothing but endless pain and heartache, it increased. There was like a hole inside of me. I was a very broken man, but I looked the part. I had this infamous father. I had sort of financial gain, but there was something inside of me that I never felt at peace. I was always looking to fulfill the anxiety and the pain, the mental health condition. So I used to use drugs, people, money, and eventually the hole got so big that I was dying for something to help me. So when I was in prison, and I'll get to your bit. When I was in prison, I'd left my wife and children prior to me getting arrested. I married another lady, an Italian lady called Daniela, who was an angel, this girl, and we lived in southern Spain together before I got arrested. And she was very caring, and she could see that I was struggling. You know, I couldn't sit with Michael. It was a terrible place to be, and it creates fear, anxiety, lack of faith.
Right.
And the will to live is based on your dishonesty. So it took me to a number of places that eventually I was gone, no matter how much I'd got, earned, but there was something inside of me that wasn't alive. And my wife then, Daniela, was friends with a girl in London who was a page 3 girl, and they were topless models in the newspaper, and her name was Samantha Fox, and she'd become a Christian. Yeah. And Daniela, my wife, was looking for some sort of thing to help me. And so she introduced me to this church in London. Now, I wasn't looking for Christianity.
Right.
I wasn't looking for Jesus. I wasn't looking for anything. I was looking for, I don't know what I was looking for, but I didn't think it was in that. And I always had respect. I always believed in God because of my grandmother was a staunch Catholic, bless her heart. I mean, she had so many pictures of Jesus on her wall, my grandmother. I thought he was a relative. They was everywhere. So
Oh, that's great.
I had an encounter in the prison, right? And we started a course. It's called Alpha, and it's an introduction to Christianity. And I'm not religious. I really am not religious.
Right.
Yeah. There was a spiritual moment which
Right.
enlightened my spirit, which touched that darkness that was inside of me. Yeah. And it took me onto a road of recovery. Yeah. So I came out of prison and I relapsed on cocaine for a year. Yeah. I'd left my wife and children. Well, we weren't married, but I'd left the family, although I was very close to my kids. I'd married this other girl. We got divorced. I was out of prison. I had all these businesses. I was doing all this sort of thing, and I'd relapsed on drugs.
Right.
And it was very painful for me. And I came out of that. I went back to church. Have I thought about crime before? Not really. I didn't. There were times when I suppose I thought about it, but I had everything what you thought you'd be satisfied with, but I didn't have Michael. I didn't have the true meaning of what I was meant to be, and it certainly wasn't sitting in prison away from my family and taking drugs and smuggling drugs. I wanted a fulfillment. There was a burning desire in me to be at peace. And I'm not a do-gooder, and I don't judge no one. What anyone does, that's up to them. This is my journey.
Right.
But I had such an encounter with the Holy Spirit. It was very hard for me to dismiss the facts that started to help me recover from the hole in my stomach. So to answer your question, have I thought about crime? Yeah, maybe. Have I committed any criminal activity? Not to my knowledge.
Right, right. No, I mean, I love how you express yourself. You really express yourself in such a way that, I mean, it's a very passionate way. And I think a lot of people can relate to a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. I think mental health issues and addiction is smashed all around the world, or the desire to be something that we're not. We're driven by, you know, this internet, this whatever goes on. You know, got to get the best training shoes. I've got to have this. I've got to have, and we never learn to live in the moment of life. We either live in the past, right?
Right.
Or we live in the future. And I don't think those places exist anymore. What exists is right now.
Yes.
And right now is okay. We're on the radio talking, everything's fine, but the mind plays tricks with us. So when I found an alignment from my dirty soul that started to get cleansed, it connected me with heart language. Yeah. Because I think if we allow the heart to speak, it can only speak in love. You know, the Bible says, love thy neighbor. And I'm not here to be religious or convert anyone. It's just my walk. And I think when we learn to love ourselves and be kind to ourselves, it enables us to be kind to other people. And it was one thing that I wasn't. There was a kind heart in me, but I always activated it from the broken soul, and it played tricks with my mind. Today, that doesn't exist. From the journey I've been on, I lost everything. I had a radio station. I had supermarkets. I had a famous internet English music group called Kasabian. You know, I had everything you thought you needed, but I didn't have Michael.
Right.
So I lived with these masks. I'm successful. I'm this. I'm that. And I couldn't get well. And I lost everything in my behavior. One of the best spiritual laws I've ever heard is we reap what we sow. Yeah. So I had to learn to reap, because I was always reaping dysfunction. I was very popular. I became very unpopular. I lost everything. Yeah. All my businesses, my money. And officially I was homeless, although I didn't live on the streets because of my family and friends. But I went from Hollywood, which was high up there.
Yeah.
And there's a place in London called Cricklewood. Yeah. Which is a sort of, it's not a rough area today, but it used to be. So I used to say, I've gone from Hollywood to Highlights to Cricklewood. I couldn't even afford a bus fare. And that's the truth.
Wow.
I got in debt, and God used that to propel me away from that life. Yeah.
Right.
And I started on my road to recovery with virtually nothing but Michael and my beautiful children, and now my beautiful grandchildren. And that's changed because I'm back, getting back on my feet again over the last 5 or 6 years.
But you found yourself, and that's the most
Priceless
important thing. Absolutely. That's the most important thing. You know, they say no successful person, you know, ever becomes successful without loss of some type.
It's where you learn.
Or failure. You know, I mean, we all make mistakes, and we all fail at something. I mean, I certainly have. You know, and I'm in a much better place also. You know, we all make mistakes, and you know, but it sounds like you really have come full circle, and you know, you're doing so much to give back. I mean, you have a book. Tell us about your book. Yeah, and a TV series coming out, right?
Right. Well, what we have at the moment, I mean, I'll just show you the book because of the name.
Okay, please. I just bought it, by the way.
It's called Sins of Fathers. Yeah. So the reason why we called it Sins of Fathers is because of my granddad and my dad, and it's biblical. Yeah. So we wrote this book with Harper and Collins, or a big publishing agency, and we now have a charity where we work with inmates coming out of prison. We're trying to get them homed and worked and mentor them, which I do at the moment. Awesome. And there's talk that we might turn this into a series, yeah? Because it's not about being a born again, yeah? It's about the transition of change, let's call it, which people might understand, from the dark to the lights, yeah? It's about healing. It's about proving that there's something far greater than us that exists. We spin round in space. We're not flat. You don't fall off the edge. So something somewhere exists. And I think it's all power. And I think for me, it's my faith in God. Right. I studied Jesus and realized he was a tough guy. He was on the cross next to a criminal. There's hope for us all. Yeah. So the paradise which now is available to me in my inner being, and it's not perfect. I still have difficult times. I'm still not what I want to be, but I'm not what I used to be.
Right.
And the most beautiful gift that I've got from my walk of faith, it's allowed me to love my children and my grandchildren and myself unconditionally. Yeah. So
Beautiful.
I follow that route. We're trying to negotiate a film. We're talking about that at the moment with some people. And the film, if we get there, which would be great, the stories that I have up my sleeve in the criminal fraternity, there's prison breaks, there's all sorts, there's killings. Not that I'm going to kiss and tell, to be honest with you, because a lot of the people I speak about are now dead because of my dad's fraternity.
Right.
And then we want to enlighten that when this guy, Michael Emmett, was on the floor with a gun pointed at his head by the police, the brokenness of that man started his recovery. The gun didn't frighten me, yeah, but what frightened me was my ability to be at peace, yeah, and I found that is priceless. So in that journey for me of losing everything and finding myself, that's what I give away, because we only keep what we got by giving it away. So my trauma and my mental health issues and my addiction issues, because they've sort of not gone, because you have to be careful every day. Yeah?
Sure.
So that's my experience, my strength, and my hope, which I share gladly through this brand that we're creating in Sins of Fathers. I work with one boy who's just done 34 years in prison. I work with another Russian boy in the Polish gangs who used to pull teeth out on his enemies. I've got him well. He's now working in the prisons, helping people. He's 6'5", and he's become a Christian. Yeah. So's the other boy. So it's not about religion for us. It's about change and helping the broken. That's what we try to achieve.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. We, Michael, are out of time, but I want you to please, I know, I could go on and on here with you because you're fascinating. But please tell people how they can reach you, where they can find your book.
Yeah, they could. I mean, it's on Amazon. It was printed. I mean, it comes from America, from Harper and Collins. I mean, the bigger sales have been in London because as we went to promote, COVID come. So we were coming out to America with Harper and Collins, Australia, COVID sort of. So we created a social media platform. So we're on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Mainly not a lot on Facebook. We work on LinkedIn, but you can find me on Michael Emmett Official. Yeah. And we work with a lot of organizations dealing with prisoners, drug addicts, and we promote what we're doing on there. So if you want to follow or buy the book, go on Amazon. I
just bought it. I wish you were here to sign it.
I'll send you one if you want me to.
I would love one. I'll send you one.
Text me an address and I'll send it out to America to you.
All right. And I will reciprocate. I'll send you mine as well.
Bless you. Oh, you're an author.
I am. We'll talk about that after. Yes.
All right. Bless you, Cindy.
Yeah, it's right here. One of my books, but I'll tell you about that after.
Bless you.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for being on the show. And don't go anywhere. When we come back after this commercial break, you'll hear my final thoughts.
Bless you. Thank you.
Welcome back to It Is What It Is with Cindy Saville. Michael Emmett, fabulous, so inspirational. I could listen to him for hours on end. I am sure all of you can can agree. Now, my final thoughts. It's never too late to change. You know, whatever you did in the past can stay in the past. It kind of helps define the person that you are today. We all make mistakes, but don't let it define you. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week. It is what it is with Cindy Saville. Remember, make sure, comment, like, and share so you can get your chance of winning this giveaway. See you next time.
Live your life like a dreamer. Fly all over the world. Open yourself so the world can see. You're a beautiful pearl. Live your day like you mean it. And don't forget who you are. You're free to go